We're in Schiller Park, which is in the south end of German Village in Columbus, Ohio. German Village is a historic neighborhood south of the downtown part of Columbus. It's been part of the city since the earliest years of Columbus and has grown into a very livable historic neighborhood. When Germans first started coming to Columbus, a lot of them came seeking opportunity, as many immigrants from Europe did. Some came to work on the Ohio Canal branch that came through Columbus. Some came to ply their trades and run their businesses that they'd had back home. They tended to settle in the southern part of the downtown area, south of downtown Columbus, and this became the heart of the German community fairly early in the 19th century. Very early on, German brewers came to town, and that was another opportunity for German workers. Just west of the area that is today German Village was a large brewing district where 4 major German breweries were located, providing not only beer but lots of employment to the German community. A street in German Village in the 19th century would have looked a lot like it does today. Maybe the trees were smaller, but it looked a lot like it does today because so much of the architecture has been preserved from the 19th century. Smaller brick buildings. There isn't any true German architecture, and people sometimes come and want to know where the Bavarian architecture is and so on. That's not really the case. People built houses simply and straightforwardly and inexpensively. They didn't have a lot of money when they arrived here, so they weren't trying to duplicate where they'd come from. They were starting new lives. Now, as a matter of fact, they did repeat some of the customs of the old country. The houses were typically located close to the street. They had front stoops that became sort of social settings for interaction, almost outdoor living rooms. Houses often were doubles. You'd live in one half, rent out the other half to another family. As time went on, buildings began to be built in more of the styles popular at the time. Italianate architecture, Queen Anne architecture, some of the mid to late 19th century styles. So you found a tremendous mix in a neighborhood such as this, as well as other neighborhoods throughout the city. Friedrich von Schiller was a German poet and dramatist from the 18th and 19th centuries. Very popular among Germans back in Germany and Germans here who moved here to the United States. He was kind of the Shakespeare of Germany. So people, of course, when they moved to Columbus or anywhere else would sort of bring that memory with them and want to commemorate it as establishing a connection to the old country. And it was 1891 when a statue was erected here in the park to commemorate Schiller and his work. There were 2 contributing factors that caused changes in the old German neighborhood. One was World War I. When that got started and Germany was fighting the Allies, there was a lot of anti-German sentiment, not only in Columbus, but across the United States. There were book burnings, there were rallies, there were people opposed to anything German. And the result here in what is now German Village was that streets got renamed, Schiller Park got renamed with American names and not German names, and some of those got corrected later on and some didn't. There was a very strong feeling, and the German community felt very much under siege and not free to express their Germanness. And it really was the point at which that assimilation really began to occur where they wanted to blend into the community as opposed to standing out so much as a separate community. There were German Americans who fought bravely on the Allied side in World War I. One of the best known is Eddie Rickenbacker, who was born on Pearl Alley right here in German Village. Became a World War I flying ace. His home on the east side is a National Historic Landmark. He's widely recognized as a true American hero, and he was of German heritage. So as with anything, it was all shades of gray and not all black and white. There was a lot of anti-German sentiment, but at the same time, a recognition that these were solid American citizens who wanted to do their part. Another influence was in 1920 when prohibition took effect. That immediately affected the German breweries, just west of German Village, and lost employment. German workers at the breweries lost their jobs because the brewery shut down, and they had to look elsewhere in the city for employment. By the late 1940s, this area, the old south end of Columbus as it was known at the time, people were certainly still living here. It certainly was a viable neighborhood, but it had not had a lot of investment. It wasn't perceived as an area of much value from a city planning standpoint. But sometimes it takes somebody with vision, and that happened to be a person named Frank Fetch, who bought an old house in what was the old German neighborhood in 1949. In that same period, the whole northern third of what had been the old German neighborhood had been demolished for urban renewal. The southern 2/3, however, it was the area where Frank Fetch and some other like-minded people saw these old brick buildings, the old brick streets and sidewalks, and saw them as an area of opportunity. They had a very distinctive character, different from the rest of Columbus. And they saw this as an area of opportunity, and they just knew instinctively it was a place that could be turned around and made into a special place to live. In 2011, the American Planning Association recognized German Village as a great neighborhood, one of only 10 in the country. And I have to say, I work in historic preservation every day, and I've traveled a lot of the United States, and I've never seen another neighborhood quite like German Village. The same kind of character, that sense of scale, the sense of quality. There are a lot of great neighborhoods in the United States, but there isn't another one quite like German Village.